Um, Welcome to Community and Coffee. Really wanted to give our community a space to interact with myself, Madison from the strategy team, cover different topics, especially during everything that's going on in the world. Want to make sure that we're figuring out ways that we can give back to our community however we can. And for us, that is with strategic support and strategic advice. So I'm Magda. I'm the Director of Marketing Strategy at Aspire IQ, and I am joined by Madison, who can go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. We're so excited to go about doing this today. My name is Madison, and I am the Senior Marketing Strategist for Aspire IQ.
We are covering all things brand ambassador today. So this is a conversation that comes up quite a bit in some of the client meetings that we have. A lot of people ask us, what is a brand ambassador program? How do I create one, start one? We have tons of questions that we've already started to stockpile from a lot of our existing clients.
Yes, as Magda mentioned, I gathered a ton of questions from our clients around brand ambassadors. The first one, let's just start off with, Magda, what is the difference between an influencer and a brand ambassador?
Typically, an influencer is thought of as someone that has a sizable social media following. So let's say 5,000 followers or more. And typically they're working with a brand in more of a transactional one-off capacity. So a brand might want to promote a specific product launch, a specific season. They'll find social media influencers to promote that. And then oftentimes that's where the relationship stops. Ambassadors, and to add to that, the relationship really lives predominantly on social media. An ambassador moves far beyond social media. An ambassador is someone that really embodies your brand, both online and offline. So think about this as someone that is consistently posting about you throughout the year. They, of course, can be a part of tentpole activations like seasons, products, etc. But really, they speak consistently to the brand values that your brand brings to the table and really how those values align with who they are as a person. Oftentimes you'll see ambassadors that are not only posting on social media, but featured on the brand's website or talking about the brand in their own communities and really kind of they'll really embody being an extension of that brand's team.
And you mentioned for an influencer that they're usually over like 5,000 followers. So for a brand ambassador, do they have to have large social followings?
Not necessarily. I think that's what makes brand ambassadors so powerful is you can really work with people all across the spectrum. I think that typically when brands are starting an ambassador program, they'll start by tapping into their community of influencers because especially right now, social media is the place where a lot of these communications are going to happen. We're not doing things like events right now. So social is an easy place to start. But I think what makes brand ambassadors really cool is you can find people that are simply subject matter experts in, your industry who have maybe 500 or so followers on social media, but they're really active in the, let's say, hiking community, and that aligns with who you are as a brand. Fitness instructors, they have, a big influence over their community. They might not have a huge social following of their own, but would be a really great ambassador simply because their personal brand really lines up with the brand values.
What would you say would be some like other attributes for who you should kind of pick as an ambassador for your brand?
I think the big thing is someone that has the willingness and the availability to act as an extension of your brand. So that's where the influencer versus ambassador thing comes back into play. A lot of times influencers are working with a number of different brands. They have a pretty busy content calendar, so it might be hard for them to dedicate a fair amount of their feed or a fair amount of their time, their energy to just your brand. So the biggest thing is someone that has the availability and more importantly than that, the passion to act as an extension of your brand. I think that ambassadors tell such a powerful story because they essentially take your brand story, put it into their own voice, and then share it with their community and kind of meet your target consumers where they are. And I think that is such a critical piece. So you want to make sure that they actually are passionate about advocating for who you are as a brand. And then I think the next thing to keep in mind when you're considering who you want to have as an ambassador is having a diverse group of people. You want all of these different stories to be told. You want people from different walks of life. You want to make sure that you have a diverse group so that you can really ensure that you are telling that brand story that will actually resonate with all of your target consumers, not just one small subset.
What are some examples of brands that have great ambassador programs?
One that I absolutely love is Yeti. So what makes their brand ambassador program unique is just how integrated their ambassadors are with their business. So they have a landing page on their website that's highlighting all of their different ambassadors, and they really look to their ambassador communities to be experts in whatever their craft is. So they have people that are fly fishers, people that are downhill skiers, people that are surfers, and they want to highlight those individual profiles and bring that story to the forefront versus it being focused on these individuals' interaction with the brand. They also do a really great job of highlighting their ambassadors on their own social media page. They let them take over. They create, Instagram video content with these ambassadors, and they really make it all about them. And I think that storytelling, at least for me, is so interesting because I'll, watch hours and hours of content about these different ambassadors because they have such unique skills, and it's all backed by the brand Yeti without ever once promoting the product. But for me as a consumer, that's what will stick out when it comes time for me to make a purchase decision. That brand will be top of mind. Another one is a bit of a smaller brand, but Majuri, who's a jewelry brand, who I'm actually wearing their earrings right now. What I love about their brand ambassador program is they really stick to what their aesthetic is: minimalist, clean design. They work with so many people of different size followings that have that same aesthetic, and it makes it really approachable. So for me, I even follow people on my own social media account that I went to high school with and college with that are now Majuri ambassadors. And it's really cool to see them seamlessly integrated into a program with people that are massive, 500,000 plus celebrities on social media. I think that they do a great job of making everyone in their ambassador community feel super included and really value the art that they create.
One of the questions that I got the most from brands when I asked them kind of the questions that they wanted to ask during this, one was really about like the contractual agreement and what you should kind of structure your agreement to look like. And you mentioned how Yeti does, they let their ambassadors create content. So what should that structure of that agreement look like? And should you also give your ambassadors free reign to post whatever they like?
That's a really good question. So I think that it's really important to have the outline of what you want the partnership to look like, especially if content is in need. If you guys say you need 5 pieces of content on a quarterly basis, you want to make that super clear. Typically, when you're going into an ambassador program, I encourage our clients to kind of do a test and reinvest approach. Start with a 3-month contract, and then if it's someone that is an absolute rock star, then lock them in for a longer period of time. But to the point of the creatives, I really think it's important for brands to set the parameters for what the content should look like, and obviously include any sort of restrictions around profanity or competitive products being in the image, but ultimately giving the brand ambassadors the creative freedom to tell your story however they'd like, I think will lead to the most authentic content. And this is why ambassadors can be so powerful versus just more of like a one-off influencer program, is because you're really letting them weave your product or your service seamlessly into the story that they're already telling on their own social channel, versus you kind of giving them a script of exactly what you want them to say. Consumers, people can read through that from a mile away. Consumers are savvier than ever. They know when something is sponsored. They know when something is disingenuous. So you want to make sure that your brand ambassadors feel that they have the flexibility and are encouraged to be as creative as they possibly can while still adhering to whatever brand guardrails you guys have in place.
Another part of the structure I know is around like kind of what you reward your ambassadors with. What do you put in your kind of program to make it attractive for people to want to commit to an ambassadorship with your brand? So can you talk through like what are some great rewards that you can kind of incorporate into your program?
I think that it's something that's super top of mind. All brands know that they can offer free product and they can offer payment, but I think the brands that really break through the clutter are the ones that provide more of an experience for their ambassadors. Before COVID, a lot of that was events, meeting in person, facilitating places for the ambassadors themselves to meet without the brand being involved. Obviously, we're in a different time right now, so I think that it is really important to understand what reward structure makes sense right now. So that could be offering your ambassadors first access to new product or free product for their family and friends. If they have birthdays coming up of their partner or their parents, their children, saying, hey, we'll cover that for you. Also, really just integrating them into your own marketing stack. So taking their content, featuring it on your social channels, your email marketing, your website, taking that story that they're telling and amplifying it 10x by sharing it with your own brand community. That is a really great way for ambassadors to understand, okay, this brand is invested in me. They're not just looking at this as a contractual relationship. They actually love what I'm talking about, and it's resonating with their audience. There's also more charitable ways I think that brands can reward their ambassadors, something like offering to donate on their behalf to a charity of their choice, having ambassadors be a part of the decision-making process when it comes to what charity to align with. There really are lots of different ways that you can get creative. And I think what I really like to do with our clients is on an industry by industry basis, figure out what makes the most sense, what's the most appropriate way to reward these people, and what's something that's new and exciting that maybe not every other brand is doing. But really it is endless. And I think that I've seen, brands like Yeti or Lululemon or Majuri get really creative with how they're rewarding people, especially right now when it's harder to have that, face-to-face interaction.
In terms of sort of the KPIs that you want to be able to measure for an ambassador program, what would you say are the best KPIs or goals to track?
I think it's about looking at KPIs at every stage of the funnel. So I kind of break it down to awareness, consideration, and purchase KPIs. Again, it is very dependent on your brand. So this will just be more of like a universal take, but let's say we start with awareness. If you're starting a brand ambassador program, you want to get these stories in front of as many people as possible. So you might start by setting metrics around reach and engagement. You want to make sure you're reaching a ton of people, and you want to make sure people are engaging with that message. You also want to track consideration quite a bit. So as ambassadors are posting on behalf of your brand, is that content resonating enough that it could lead to a purchase decision? So metrics to track here could be something like post saves, post shares. If you have an Instagram story, a swipe up link, these show more purchase intent. And this allows a brand to then, of course, retarget specifically when it comes to traffic to the website. And then the lowest funnel is definitely looking at ways in which ambassadors can drive purchase. So this could be giving ambassadors a unique link that they are consistently using throughout a quarter on their Instagram stories, in their YouTube description, in TikTok, whatever it may be, they're using that link consistently, and you can see how many people are actually making purchases as a result of that. You can also do things like leveraging the ambassador's content across your own marketing stack to see how their content will lower your CPA on Facebook ads, will increase click-through rate from email marketing, get people out of the inbox and onto the website. Be able to see how time on site is improved when you're using more authentic, organic, ambassador created content. Those are all like lowest funnel KPIs to track. It is really important to look at it as a holistic program. If you're just looking at your ambassadors to drive one-to-one sales, like we want to only have coupon code redemption, we only care about that, it's not going to be as effective as a strategy because the cost per acquisition can be a little bit higher there. So you want to understand that you're not just getting, certainly ambassadors will drive an uptick in direct sales, but also there is a lot of indirect ROI related to ambassadors. So you'll want to look overall when you turn this program on, are you seeing a boost in website traffic? Are you seeing an uptick in, search, things like that? So it is about understanding the holistic program. And I think that, again, this is very generalized. So if anyone wants to dive in deeper and learn more about specific KPIs for their program and their industry, we're more than happy to set up working sessions around that. But yeah, it's really about looking at it and looking at the whole funnel and then figuring out what you're going to track at each stage.
Kind of turning that on the flip side. So talk through kind of how you part ways with an ambassador when they're not really performing very well.
This is a really tricky one. So that's why I think it's super important to set some sort of testing period instead of just locking into an annual agreement with someone. I think that 3 months is typically a good amount of time. And I think it's worth setting up the expectations right out of the gate that you value this individual, you want to work together, but you also want to make sure that it's a partnership that's working on both sides. So if you're seeing that someone is consistently late on their deliverables, someone is not necessarily portraying your brand in the most appropriate way, or just kind of not communicative with you, I think it's perfectly reasonable to just say, we've absolutely, loved working with you. We appreciate the content. We're actually making some revisions to our ambassador program moving forward. So we won't be renewing our contract. And people understand this, especially if an ambassador is hard to get a hold of, is late on their deliverables. They'll understand that ultimately this program has to benefit both parties. So while it could be a bit of an uncomfortable conversation, I think it is really important to make sure that you have a system in place where you guys as a brand are protected as well, and you're not locked in for a 6 to 12-month contract with someone that you might not know how well they work with you.
That is really great advice. And I think that also kind of plays into having an influencer partnership as well, and maybe one of the blockers for why people don't create ambassador programs, because they're worried about that. So that's some really incredible advice for anybody who is looking to kind of build this ambassador program, and that might be their hesitation.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be this crazy leap from an influencer program to an ambassador program. You can take it slow and just structure it slightly different, figure out ways in which the program can benefit your brand even more. Like I had mentioned, the content, having them on your website, all of that good stuff. But you don't have to say that this is now a program that we're locking in for the next year. It can still be, a couple months testing and then reinvesting behind those people that are really top performers.
Test and reinvest. We love to say that here. What are some key ways that you can actually vet these people that you want to potentially have in your ambassador program?
So there's a couple different ways. I think the first one is more straightforward around metrics. So if you want your ambassador program to be very focused on social media, they're posting about you on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it may be, it is important that their audience is authentic and their audience is one that resonates with your target audience. So using something like Aspire IQ, you have the ability to look at very robust details about these creators' own audience and also their own interests, other brands they're mentioning, things like that. The biggest thing that I look at is engagement rate. So if a potential ambassador has only like a 0.1% engagement rate or like a 1 to 2% engagement rate, I think that that's a little on the low side. And that could be an indication that maybe their content isn't as compelling as you would like it to be for your brand story. I typically look at around 4 to 5% engagement rate. And then if you're looking to more of the nano side, even higher than that. But those are kind of the baseline metrics. Look at their engagement rate, look at their follower count, look at their audience authenticity rate. Look at what they're interested in as a creator and look at what their audience is interested in. If that aligns with your brand, then that's perfect. Then I think there's more of the aesthetic / values vetting process, which is a little bit more subjective, but looking at the actual quality of the content they create. Does that align with content that you as a brand could use for your own marketing efforts? Do they have a similar aesthetic? Like with Majuri, the minimalist, clean line, artistic aesthetic, that is very much apparent in all of their ambassadors who post about them. They have a very similar vibe. And then I think the last piece is the personal brand values. So if you're a brand that promotes being eco-friendly, you'd want to find other creators that also have that message so that it doesn't come across as like, inauthentic, this word is overused, but you don't want it to come across as just like, oh, that doesn't make sense that so-and-so is working with this brand because they've never cared about environmental sustainability or anything like that. You want to make sure that when the partnership starts, your brand is pretty seamlessly woven into their existing story. Looks like we have one more question that came in the Q&A tab. The question was, should ambassadors be exclusive to your brand? I think that exclusivity is really important for competitive brands. So if it's like you're a workout clothing brand and they work with another workout clothing brand, I think that makes sense to request exclusivity there. But I think that if it's complementary brands, that's generally something that I think is fine. The biggest thing to make sure is that their content calendar is not so booked up with other partners that they may have that there's not enough space for you. But yeah, I think exclusivity is something that, again, is very personal to what a brand prefers. I've actually had clients say that they intentionally do not include an exclusivity clause because they appreciate the clout, for lack of a better word, that they get by these ambassadors working with other really awesome brands. So like we're in very good company there. But again, it is very personal. I think that if it's competitive, I generally advise our clients to have a competitive exclusivity clause.
Those were all the questions that we had for today. So if anybody listening has any further questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to jump on a call, either myself or Magda, if you just want to talk through putting together more of what the structure will look like for a brand ambassador program. We are always here to help.